hello. I was yawning then because I work very hard. That's why. It's because I work immensely hard, that even when I'm trying to be on form, an involuntary response of a yawn just attends. That's why. I'm very busy. Sorry, I just thought I'd start off with a joke. Actually, today has been one of those days. It's been one of those days, chaps. I'm not going to lie. Is it just me? Or is it getting older involves us going into some kind of fast forward? I remember when I was a child that my mum would say, time goes faster as you get older. And I'd be like, I'm 8 and today has lasted 14 years. I literally feel like I live in Narnia and that like my whole day is at least 12 years. It's as simple as that. But no, she was right. She was right. Literally, I was 22 about 3 days ago. 22. And look at me now, 24. I'll get on with it anyway. I just let people join. Let me know how you're going. Nice seeing people on Facebook. I can only ever see Facebook people. Hi, Scott, Holly, Nick. I very rarely remember to read them at the side, but hello. Right, we'll get on in a second. How are you all feeling? I am dressed in a crime top. I know it says no comment. It's because I was doing my YouTube earlier on. It's good though, isn't it? Nice and red. No comment. Actually, I wonder sometimes whether criminals could buy these just to be really arsey with the police. You know, like if they get arrested and they just sit there the whole time going. Whole new line of trade there to see whether Strange Ways have got a website. Let's get on with it, chaps. Although the other day I listened to a very, very staunch feminist say that words like chaps and guys was not appropriate to be used towards women. So now I'm going to use it more. Chaps and guys. I've just not got enough time in my life to worry about things like that. Anybody else feel like that? Feel free to comment. What is it? Like, in a world where right now in the UK, at least 1 in 3 families are dealing with poverty and kids are literally starving, how can you be asked whether somebody calls a group of women guys? I mean, how does that even register as a concern? Is it just me? How does that cannot be mentally healthy, can it? I'm all about making things mentally healthy. I think to be mentally healthy, you have to pay attention to things that matter and that, I don't know, have some positive impact. But right now it feels that a lot of people obsess about things that in the scheme of things make no difference apart from their sense of self-superiority. Right, with that, I'll get on with it. I have a question for the mental health clinic. I've been accepted onto trauma therapy, nice, as an outpatient, when I become an outpatient, which I'll have to attend weekly, as well as a weekly trauma group, with uni on top, if that and the house and child stuff on top of that. I'm really scared that this is going to be too much and will make me ill. Like a lot of trauma-based stuff, not a lot of time to decompress. Do you have any advice on how to decompress after therapy quickly or rebottle everything back up? Well, I don't like the word rebottle. I think compartmentalize is a good way of changing and reframing the word rebottle. So bottling things up tends to be about suppression. Okay, so swallowing down that which has impacted upon us. And unfortunately, in the end, that gets too difficult to do. So it either makes us feel emotionally suffocated, or it can often mean that we just feel like we're going to explode. Either of which are best avoided. Compartmentalizing our feelings is a way of putting them in safe places. So when I do visualization exercises with clients, and certainly for my own visualization, in my brain, when I close my eyes, I see a library. It's very much like a Harry Potter-esque type library. Imagine, you know, the really tall ladders that you can kind of, anybody used to watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer, there was a library in there that was a bit like this, and you could like slide along on the ladders, and they're like just endless books, right? Well, I have that in my brain. That's my visualization. And every single book, usually big red one with a gold binding, very specific, they all have a specific area of memory. And my dad's in one of those, bigger than the others. And I don't want to forget what happened to my dad, and I don't want to forget the trauma because it's really important to me. But I don't need it every day. It's not helpful. So in visualization exercises, I compartmentalize, and I can go at times when I feel like I need to respond to some feelings and explore that and be nostalgic and all the things that go with it. I will do that. So I think in trauma work, you can work heavily on that kind of stuff anyway. Secondly, it's a bit of the chicken and the egg, isn't it? It's like, I have all this trauma, I've got uni work, I've got a kid. You know, you can create a list of limitations the size of your arm. You genuinely can. Because that's about fear. So what you really need to explore is the reality of that beginning feeling-wise, which is, I'm scared of confronting this. I'm scared of trusting people with this trauma. You know, it's a privilege when you're a therapeutic practitioner to be given the journey of somebody else and to go on a navigation with them, looking at that. And same when you're in group work. I run group work, and it's a joy to hear people invest in that process. But it's scary when you're the person doing that, when you're starting to allow people to listen to your pain and to cast their eyes on something that is both precious and painful. It's a privilege for people to be able to see that stuff and share it with you, but it's painful. So what you'll do is you'll be like, well, maybe life's too exhausting right now. Or maybe my kid's too little right now. Or maybe my work won't get done to the degree that I need it to. And we can just keep doing that. Because if you don't do it now, then in 2 years' time, you'll be like, well, my child's at school now. And then in 5 years' time, well, I've got that new job now. And then in 10 years' time, you'll be like, I'm literally not able to cope anymore because I never did any of the work that I needed to do, that I deserved to make it to a point where I felt at peace. You're never, ever going to be like, yay, let's go and work through trauma. Because you didn't create the trauma. It was provided by somebody else. It affected you. You didn't choose it. But you can choose to work through it. And you will be a different person at the end of it. And that's exciting. Yeah, it's scary. Yeah, there'll be moments where it's painful. Yeah, you might have moments where you get really upset after it. And that will be part of the process. There is obviously, when we look at therapy, times where we shouldn't necessarily engage in it. At certain points where maybe we've got to a point of stability after a crisis that's occurred recently, such as suicidal ideation, suicide attempt, and you just need to kind of get yourself to a place where you can just look back and be like, okay, now I'm at a good place to do that. There are times where, you know, it might not be absolutely ideal, but when it's trauma-based and you've got this opportunity to get trauma treatment and you've got an opportunity to do trauma group work, it will be brilliant because you're gonna, first in the group, not have to explain everything for the 100th time. It's gonna feel like a meeting of minds. And in the therapy, you're gonna have a practitioner who's specialized in it. It doesn't mean you won't have struggles. It doesn't mean that it won't be difficult at uni. It doesn't mean that your kid won't frustrate you at times. That's just life. It's going to happen. But what you're doing is you're putting limiting blockers in front of you because you're scared. And feel the fear and do it anyway, as the book would say. And know that that's where therapy comes in really helpful, because you'll be able to go and be like, oh my God, last week my child didn't sleep till 4 o'clock in the morning. And then at 4:30, they wanted to get up and watch TV. And I felt like I had to because I would have been a terrible parent otherwise. You know how it is. And you'll do that, and in therapy there'll be a place that's safe for you to explore that, as well as all the other difficult stuff. So there is never a perfect time, but it sounds like you've got a great foundation. Just accept that you're scared. Everyone's scared of therapy initially, and then everyone's like, this is great. This is great, you know? Find your great. You will do. And well done. And well done on having those feelings, but kind of in the back of your mind being like, yeah, I'm going to do it, because I can hear that that's there. And when it comes to how do you deal with the compartmentalization, I do a lot of visualization exercises. You can do that in trauma as well, in your trauma work. And again, anything like mindful practice, relaxation, meditation, things that help you to just reduce some of that high anxiety and just make it a little bit more manageable. That's all very helpful. On February the 23rd, my mental health got the better of me and I jumped from a bridge and I broke my pelvis in 2 places. My thigh bone was shattered, my elbow had to be fully reconstructed, I'm now learning to walk and use my arm again. Everyone keeps telling me how proud I should be. But I feel so ungrateful because I'm not proud. This isn't what I wanted. I didn't and still don't want to be alive. I'm really at a loss and I don't know what to do. How can I explain this to people? So, first of all, just want to acknowledge that I'm really sorry that you got to a point where you felt like the only way of managing that feeling was to alleviate yourself from this world, and that when it happened, it's caused you this kind of injury. That must be very, very challenging for you. I don't think for 1 minute that you should feel that expressing how you truly feel makes you a person deserving of any judgment or a person who people can't still be proud of. I think that that will add to your alienation and isolation. If we don't tell people how we truly feel, even when it's painful for them to hear it, then we further exacerbate those feelings of loneliness within us. We imagine that there is nobody who can understand us. We play a game. It's the game of I'm fine. And that's why so many people who talk about people that they lost to suicide will recount that that person seemed fine, because the person often doesn't tell the other around them that they love and care for the true extent of their sadness and pain and depression. And thus, it actually creates even more of a feeling of alienation and a kind of sense of abandonment from anything joyful in life. So I think that you're going to have this real inauthenticity in your world and the way you feel emotionally about it right now. And the only way that you can really start to make a difference to that is to actually say to people, I feel like I want to kill myself still. I wish I'd not woken up when I hit that ground. And you will struggle to say it because you don't want to let people down. I get that. But you're not. Nobody throws himself off anything and causes himself grave injury because they either want to hurt other people or they're failing at something. It's to do with unimaginable, inescapable pain in that moment and creating a solution to that, albeit a solution that's permanent. And I can genuinely not tell you whether it's one that means you end. I don't actually believe that. So I'm one of those people that I think this is a sure thing, what you experience here and now. And maybe it's not about that strategy, it's about finding some other strategies. Because suicide is that permanent solution to a temporary problem. That doesn't mean that you're not in unbelievable pain emotionally. It doesn't mean that you don't sit every single moment of every single day and imagine what it would be like to stop breathing. You probably do all those things. I'm just saying that that's you seeking a solution. You're trying to find a strategy. You're trying to find something that works to stop this hurting in the way that it's hurting. And I'm saying, well, suicide, that seems to be for you the solution, but I'm not really that sure it is. As in, I don't even know what happens at that point. What I do know is that you know if you stay here and you really commit to acknowledging how you genuinely feel and having those difficult conversations and allowing people to meet you on that territory, just knowing that people start seeing you just for who you are and how you feel is going to be a step in the right direction for finding that solution, because you're not doing that right now. So until you do that, how do you know where it will lead? That's saying about you don't need to see the whole staircase to take the first step. You don't. You just trust that if you keep seeing one step and putting one foot in front of the other, in the end, you find the destination. You are obviously going through some physical challenges and traumas that I agree, as far as what other people are saying, are pretty mean that you're actually managing to do that. I mean, to learn to walk again, to go through the physical discomfort, you must have really got some resilience there physically. But the mental aspect of this, the emotional aspect, is what you really need help with. And I can't make you just have those honest to goodness conversations. I can't make you sit with a nurse, sit with a doctor, sit with a therapist, psychiatrist, and actually say, I don't want to be here. But unless you do that, how are they going to give you reason to? Unless you tell them medically where you are, psychologically where you are, how are they going to get it right? whatever it is that treatment-wise needs to occur, so that you start thinking that a bridge or a height isn't what you need to throw yourself off, that maybe there's a different way and different direction that can take your life somewhere amazing. And in 5 years' time, you'll look back and be like, wow, that was ultimately a terrible thing that happened, but actually it led to something pretty miraculous in the long term. For every suicide, there's a story that wasn't told, right? That's why a lot of people wear the punctuation mark. I've got mine there, because it's not meant to be the end of it, right? You tried to kill yourself, and it could have ended the story, but it hasn't. And I'm a big believer in there is always a reason for these kind of things, even when they're dire and desperate and dark. What is it that you're learning right now? And it's not just about, well, I'm learning that I don't want to be here. It's like, no. That's not it. That's not it. You're learning that this is not working for you. You are learning that. And you're learning that whatever direction you've been moving in, it's not the right direction. It's not as simple as, well, I'm learning that I just don't want to be here. It's like, no, this is that it's not working. But there are all these other things that may work. Unless you tried them all, then your data is flawed. So unless you've done all the things that could change your life and transition your life, your data is flawed. You can't make an informed choice. You think you can. Well, I'm opting out, but I'm saying you can't. Because at the end of the day, if you do something like, I don't know, move to a new part of the country, go overseas and volunteer, become monk or a nun, I don't know. There are all these things that you haven't tried. There could be infinite peace in these possibilities for you. The bridge and the floor, the height in the floor, that is literally almost a metaphor of allowing yourself to let go. And what I'm saying is, what about letting go in a different way? Because my God, it takes balls to do what you've done. It really does. I never underestimate the courage that you must have had to do that. But I think ultimately it's the driving force behind it that you should be listening to, which is the path that you've been on hasn't been the right direction. So you transition it and you change it and you develop a new role, a new place, a new path, a new journey. But you can't say life is disastrous and terrible unless you've fundamentally tried all the things that is available in this world. And I have a sneaky suspicion that if you just allow yourself to start entertaining that and thinking, okay, maybe I want to go and work with orangutans, or maybe I want to go and swim with dolphins, maybe I want to get a job as a surf instructor, maybe I want to go and spend some years in a yoga place in India, maybe I want to go and do a silent retreat for 2 months. I don't know. But I'm telling you, if you just allow yourself to know that that suicide idea, it's always there, it's always powerful, it's a possibility, you can always use it if you want to in the long term, but it seems like there's so many other things that you could do before just to see. And if it's always there, well, it's always an option. So you may as well try all these other things. That's what I'd say, and it begins with just starting to be honest about how you feel, without shame, without guilt, just saying, I'm struggling, I'm really struggling. You know, you say you're proud of me, but actually it makes me feel like I'm lying because I don't feel proud about myself. I feel like I don't want to be here. I feel like I failed. I feel like I didn't succeed in what I was trying to do. They're the conversations you have to start, because that changes everything. It starts to change the way that you relate to the world, and that starts to change the way you inhabit the world, and that starts to change the way that you feel about the world. Just let me know how you're going on, obviously. Any advice on a hot and cold husband who only shows interest when he wants sex? So, first of all, men and women are slightly different. I know it's a vast stereotype, and somebody may well run in and be like, oh my God, Emma said that it was all right to call women guys today, and now she's suggesting that men and women are different. Men and women are different. I know it's controversial. I know we've gone a bit bonkers and we've decided that that isn't true anymore and that we're all the same. But actually, even though men and women are more similar They have a lot more things similar about one another than they do different. They do, right? There are far more things that connect us and we connect with and emotionally are, but there are also some things that are distinguishing about us. And that is that men tend to be more interested in things. Women tend to be more interested in people. Doesn't mean that men aren't brilliant dads and partners and all the things in between. I'm just saying, this isn't me. This is research. This is like real research. So men tend to be, that's why men tend to take jobs in things like building, mechanics, engineer. I know that's another controversial theme, isn't it? That, you know, it might be that men are better at doing certain things and women are better at doing certain things. It's not because there's anything wrong with that. It's like, we're all great, we're all brilliant, but it's like just the way it is. You always get women in STEM fields, I know, but nowhere near as many as men. You get hardly any women who are builders. You know, at the end of the day, we are different and it's good. It's good that we're different. That's what keeps the world going. But because of that, men sometimes are more interested in things than people, even in relationships. So it's like they may seem cold and distant because they're in their shed and they're just seemingly lost in a world of tools. Or it may be that they're sat on the couch and they look like they're totally zoned out of life entirely whilst you're just trying to have a discussion about something important, right? And for you, the feedback is disinterested. But then when you go to bed, he's like, let's get hot and heavy between the sheets. And it's like, wait a minute, that's not okay. You've just ignored me for 2 hours and watched TV, or you've been in the shed and you think I should be interested in your lawnmower. So you can take that as rejection, right? Or it could just be that what has happened is he's got lazy in the communication states. He loves you, he's happy with you, he's just going through the motions, and then when he's with you physically, he's very attracted to you, he wants to have sex with you, so there's a clear connection. It comes down more to the fact that you both have to learn how to communicate again. And it's so normal, particularly in middle age, for relationships to be this way, genuinely. Habits are formed. You go from being fireworks and everything's intoxicating and you're so interested in one another and all the little quirks are really great and they're cute, and then like 2 years later you're like, I want to stab them in the eye, they're breathing too hard. Okay, you probably don't want to stab them in the eye, being sarcastic, but you know what I mean. Everything can annoy you. It's like, oh, it used to be that the pants on the floor were fun and now I want to take the pants and I want them to eat the pants. It's just the way that human beings are. We get a bit resentful when we get into familiarity, as they say, you know, it's just what happens. So what tends to happen is that you've got into this habit and you get into this rut, and then you just think that one another isn't making the effort, but really it's just that you've forgotten how to be excited by some of the things that used to excite you. So it's good that he wants sex with you, genuinely really good. And hopefully you do want sex with him, although it is completely normal for women, particularly when they're going through the menopause, to imagine that they would much rather, I don't know, just sit and stare at a wall. That would be more preferable than sex a lot of the time when you're going through those hormonal changes. A lot of women of a certain age will be nodding right now. But it's about communication. So if he is seeming quite cold or distant, it's because he's just taking the relationship for granted. So there's no point seeing that and then not ultimately thinking, well, how do I want to shift and change? This is your transition moment. It's really good, I keep saying it, that you've got the sex, because that is really good. You don't want to lose that. It's brilliant. It means that there's something really connected and solid. It's the other things, intimacy-wise, that need to be inflamed, shall we say. And again, that comes down to the fact that men often deal with emotional exchange sexually. So like sex is really important to them. It's a way of them feeling that you connect and are emotionally involved with them and you love them and that they're needed. So that expression is powerful. But women tend to need more of a, shall we say, communication and intimacy that's not about sex. It's about love. It's about, you know, expressions of gratitude. It's about noticing when the hair's been done nicely. It's about recognising the fact that the house is clean and the food's been done nicely if they happen to do it. It's all of those things that build that. So unless you're asking for it, it probably won't get delivered. Women, again, this is a stereotype, but this is very, very clear when I've worked with many many people, from groups to individuals to relationships, women often fail to ask for their needs to be met. It will be more of an expectation that that person will psychically be able to understand it, and if they can't, then they're failing. It is not the case. It's just that unless we specifically ask for something, we can't really berate or blame the person for not giving it us. If we say, this is what we need, and then they don't give it you, then we have a reason to be annoyed. We have a reason to be upset. We have a reason to take them to task over that. But in the first instance, it's like, okay, what do I want to change? That's what you need to do. Sit down, write a list. What does he need to do for you to feel that vibrancy again in your relationship? What does he need to express to you that reminds you of when you first got together? What steps can he take? And you just kind of get it down on paper, get a pen portrait of possibility of what you want. And from there, you sit down and you express it, you explain it. And the best thing about that is that when he starts to come up with the goods, your sex life will feel far better because you'll be fully invested in it as well. But it's not unusual for people to get into these kind of relationship funks. It's just really important that instead of going, well, it's hopeless, it's beyond repair, we've stopped communicating, it's not working, it's more like, what bits are with the sex is working great, we've got something solid there. How do we build around that and get you back to a place where you feel that intimacy and bond that he clearly still does feel to some degree with you? Emma, I've just been made redundant. I'm heartbroken. Yesterday was so good. Now it's so shit. So first of all, yesterday you were still exactly the same person. And I'll give you this example. Not one of you has ever walked around a graveyard and it said, Stacey, amazing accountant. John, incredible builder. Never. Everything that you are remains as you are. Your job, it's just a title that somebody else gives you and pays you. Now, I appreciate that redundancy comes with a problem, which is finance. Get it? Yeah, of course it does. So you need another job. That's without doubt. And that's the key issue. You need another job. But you are still everything you were the day before. When somebody makes you redundant, it can be for a whole heap of reasons. At the moment, the economic state, all of those things, everything in between, is a confusing territory for employers and employees. You are still everybody and everything and every facet of the person that you were yesterday, today. Somebody giving you a title and paying you for that does not make you more or less. So now you've got to go, right, actually, I am feeling a sense of grief over my job going. That's completely something that is normal. But you can't let this overwhelm you. You can't let this overwhelm you because there is always reason. It's bizarre in life that when we're faced with these crises, which I say all the time, you never learn anything in the good times, ever. It's like, stay. That's probably the only thing you learn. This is good, I'll stay. The bits where you are challenged, where you have your resilience tested, where you have to get a bit creative, they're the times where you grow on fast forward, and you're there right now. So there is no point thinking to yourself, wow, I'm heartbroken. I'm just gonna sit here and wallow, right? Not saying that you are doing it, you're asking a question here. So clearly that's not the case. But this is a moment now where you have an opportunity to say to yourself, what do I really want? What is it that I really want for my life now? When you think about the job that you had, was it your dream job? Was it everything you'd ever anticipated? Was it the best job in the world? Or was it a job that you liked, but you only intended to stay maybe 2 or 3 years? Ask yourself those questions. Then get excited. Don't think about the limitations, the obstacles, the blockers, the money. All of that stuff will get sorted because you'll get another job. Think more about how you're going to direct this energy. What is it that you want? There are more home working opportunities than ever before. So even if you don't get your dream job straight away, there are things that you can do to make life easier as you work on what you want to do next. But honestly, instead of seeing this as a loss, see it as an opportunity in disguise. I promise you, there are always these little threads that run throughout our biggest moments of sadness and loss, and we don't really see them. They're like a tiny little golden thread, but it's just a flame, just a tiny little flame that's running throughout all of those moments. And if you allow it to ignite fully and to teach you wholly what it's there for, then I promise you that something incredible can come through this. Your heart isn't broken, you're just shocked. It's what redundancy does. You feel shocked, you're blindsided. You're like, I wasn't expecting that. The world feels vulnerable, and it's like, okay, yeah, because security is a myth. And I don't know why we don't teach everybody that. Security is a myth. Life's full of loss. So we undertake to do it joyfully. We pick ourselves up, we dust ourselves off, we adjust whatever needs to be adjusted, and we stride into a new circumstance, knowing that if it ever happens again, well, we've dealt with it before. So we're even stronger, we're even braver, we're even better than before. That's what happens when you use these moments. And I've had these moments, and lots of people listening will have shared their moments, no doubt, on the chat. This is a normal part of life. It hurts, but it grows you, and it changes you, and it makes you better. So you're going to be whoever you are, Mark 2 or Mark 3 or Mark 4 now. And you know what it's like. The new versions are always better than the old ones. So just now it's time to get yourself together, make a plan, work the plan, move forward. And in a few months, this will all just be a momentary memory that when you look back, you'll be like, God, I can't believe it bothered me. Because that's what happens. We find reason, and you'll find your reason, I promise you. But come back every week so that we can remind you of that until you've got that job, but you're going to nail it. It's coming. Your future's coming, and it's going to be great. Just have that positivity, remember? Don't let it break you. Hi Emma, I've just qualified in law. Congratulations. I've now started my work placement in coroner's court. I'm struggling mentally, need advice, I'm always emotional. Well, I mean, if you're an empath, you're going to be emotional in a coroner's court because you're literally working with either murder, suicide, unexplained deaths, etc. And you're working with families who are there, and it's really upsetting and traumatizing for certain people. Like, everybody has a temperament, and you can manipulate them to some degree. I've often talked about that here. I have neurological tics, and on the whole, I can control them now, but I couldn't when I was a kid because I've got a really sensitive temperament, and therefore it got to a stage where, you know, walking around ticking like this isn't the easiest thing to do when you're trying to make friends and be cool. But at the end of the day, I realised that I could manipulate it to some degree if I just learned some ways of seeming confident. And you know, you can do that to a certain degree, but my tics have never gone, you know, and they get me on bad days because I've still got that temperament. With you, you've probably got a sensitive temperament. It's why you've gone in for the law. You believe in justice. You want people to get the right outcomes, and that's brilliant, and it shows great moral fibre, but it doesn't mean that you've got like a disagreeable nature, which a lot of people in law do have, with respect. I know quite a lot of barristers, and I don't think I've ever met anybody as disagreeable as them. If you have an agreeable personality and you're sensitive and you genuinely care about people, and clearly you do, then you're going into a world that can feel so cold. I mean, Jesus, the coroner's courts can feel so cold. The coroners can be, well, in my experience, sometimes they're not necessarily in the right place. They don't ever have a lot of empathy and personality sometimes that make the people who are actually being present at those places feel valued. You're probably seeing all of those things. So first of all, you've qualified in law. It's amazing. You've found that you're in the coroner's court and you're not liking it. That's probably an important lesson for you about where you need to go with what you're going to use from this learning. And I don't know what you can do about placements. I don't know whether you have to be in that place for a period of time or whether you just have to kind of grin and bear it, or you can cut loose. There are lots of different areas of the law. Just because you're not enjoying a place like the coroner's courts, which again, I would certainly not like to be there for lots of reasons, because I've been through the coroner's court process for one, but also because the days are long and there's a lot of information. And like I said, there are outcomes for families that I think aren't always fair, and you're dealing with all of this kind of emotional stuff going on. And if you're even a little bit emotionally sensitive, you're probably absorbing it. So there's nothing wrong with believing that you've found that something that you thought was going to work for you isn't going to work for you anymore. I always believe that's powerful, because often we put ourselves in positions where we feel like we fail, when really all we've done is find out that we're not suited to something. Like, how would you ever know that you weren't suited to something unless you had the balls to try it? So if that's your I've had the balls to try it, it's not for me moment, well, that's fine. Certainly don't put yourself in a position where you're going to make yourself ill. Or there's another alternative, which is like a lot of people feel. You start something, it upsets you, you feel devastated by the content. And then as time goes on, you start realizing that you've created this kind of resilience towards it, and you just realize that it doesn't hit you in the way it used to. It doesn't mean you don't care. It just means that you get used to it, to a way that you can accommodate it more, you can carry the burden a little bit more easily. So they're things that I would explore. You can look at either of those. And then the other thing that I do is, even if you're in a place where mentally you're not struggling on a personal level, like in therapy, we have clinical supervision, which is where you just go and you talk to your clinical supervisor about cases, because it helps you to, I mean, obviously sometimes you can just go and just talk about whatever you like, but essentially that's what it's for. And you do that because it helps you to unload. Maybe you could think about having some therapy just once a week. If you're qualified in law, you're not going to get a bad wage. So maybe you could pay and invest in yourself and just go and be like, I just need to debrief. This is what happened, and see what emotional trauma is yours, what's theirs, what was absorbed, what you need to hand back. Those kind of processes can be really helpful as well. But I'm not somebody who gives up. Don't get me wrong. I'm one of those people who kind of fights hard. But when I find something I really don't like, I won't stick at it unless it's really important for me to do so. I always see life as a guessing game. And then until you've tried something, you don't really know whether it's for you. There's no shame at all in saying goodbye to things that are bad for you. Hiya Emma, to bother you. I need and want to do inner child work. Why in therapy for sexual abuse? This is something I haven't been able to do so far. I'm not sure if subconsciously I just can't let that wall down or what it is. I just can't get back to how it felt to be 7. Any help with this would be appreciated. Not everyone can do that. So you're not failing because you don't know what it was like to be 7. If we were to do a straw poll now, if I ask Facebook, for example, how many of you can genuinely remember what it was like to be 7, as in feel it, smell it, taste it, experience it? Some people are very nostalgic. Their threads back to childhood are powerful. And some people have really abstract memories of childhood, like moments, like snapshots, I would say, like photographs. And you can try and get back there, but you're always memorizing a memory of a memory of a memory of a memory of a memory, right? So you thinking, I'm doing inner child work in my therapy about my sexual abuse, and now I'm feeling like I'm failing because I can't connect with her or him as a child. You don't need to add any burden to yourself. Like, not everyone can do regression in that way. Everybody has a different style of coping. Everyone has a different style therapeutically. I'm not a reflector that much. I'm kind of a present person. I don't really think about what was and what will be. I'm just more of a what is. And if I reflect back, I can see myself in brownie uniform. I can see myself going to school in a tie. I can see certain conversations, but they're fleeting, they're momentary. So don't feel that you're not doing something right, because it sounds like that's what you're thinking. Inner child work for some people can be amazing. It can feel like you resolve a lot of the anxieties of the child in the present, though you're resolving the past, right? It's the same when people do things like schema therapy and they look at all the different modes that they used to be in. But arguably for you, it might be that the message is that the trauma work in childhood isn't where you need to be right now. That's another opportunity, because sometimes we're presented mindset wise to explore what the limitations are trying to promote within us. So, you might be being asked to go back to being 7, 8 years of age, but actually your mind's like, nah, it's not where I want to go. And on one level, people can say, well, that's because you're putting some blockers there, there's some obstacles there. But it could well just be that there's something else that's more present, there's something else that needs to be dealt with, and you might never even need to get back there. Wanting to do something therapeutically doesn't always end up with the result that we expected. So you can do EMDR with me every day of the week, it won't make a difference, literally. I mean, I've had it, just, it's not for me. I know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that EMDR has been beyond transformative for a huge amount of people. I mean, disproportionately successful, really. So I don't think that the therapy is the issue there. It's me. It's not a me thing. And that's cool. It's cool, right? It's not a me thing. It's brilliant for other people. It's brilliant. CBT, do it with me all day. Not going to work. Not going to work. I don't see it as a CBT issue. It's a me thing. I don't see I'm the failure here. It's just I've not found my fit in that, right? That's what I'm trying to get across to you. What we might want to get from something and what we end up getting may not be what we set out to achieve. But it's more about being like, okay, what is going on there for me? Is it that I just don't want to go back there because it's too painful? And it could be. But then maybe it's not the inner child work that needs to happen in that moment. Maybe it's the adult self needs to be able to talk about it as an adult, because I feel some distance. I feel like, well, I'm an adult now. I can talk about this because I'm safe. And I don't want to go back because she wasn't safe or he wasn't safe. So you can see that sometimes the protective mechanism isn't there because it's betraying you and preventing you from creating progress. It can be protecting you because actually you're the adult now. You don't want to go back to being the vulnerable child, potentially. I'm saying think about what it's serving its purpose in informing you, and you might get there. But again, just because there is a therapy that exists and we want it to work doesn't mean that it's the right one for us. Like I said, in my experience, everybody has a different type of connection with different types of therapies. You might be one of those people who just need to talk it through and just slowly arrive there. You might want to do some visualizations with your therapist and just be like, okay, do some guided meditation, guided visualizations, take me back to child state. And if that brings something and opens something up for you, brilliant. But again, don't frustrate yourself with it. Don't be frustrated that you're not managing to do that. It's not for everyone. Like I said, not everybody wants to do that stuff. Not everyone's brain is geared up for that stuff. It's like, I've worked with people who've gone to regression therapy and like they reckon they can remember like 10 lifetimes ago. Like they solidly believe it. And I believe them, I believe that. I never ever question somebody's experience is authentic to their process, and never ever question that, because honestly, they fully believe and they fully experienced what they believed. You could put me under hypnosis 24/7, 7 days a week. It's not happening. It's not happening. It's not happening. Nowhere to regress. Doesn't mean that I don't believe. It's just that these things work differently for different people, right? So don't feel like you're getting anything wrong at all. Hi Emma, sorry to bother you. Honestly, I'm going to start a swear box. Apart from it will be a sorry to bother you box. And every time somebody says sorry to bother you, you'll have to put £1 in it. And I will be able to go on holiday next year on said pounds, because you all do it every time. You're not bothering me at all. Sorry to bother you. But how do you learn to care about yourself? I care about others hugely and will always do anything I can to help someone. But I just don't care about what happens to me anymore. I'm going through a tough time, but genuinely at the point I do care what happens to me, but I worry about everyone else depending on my results, if that makes sense. All I care about is that everyone I care about is okay. I want to care about myself, but I haven't for so long. I don't know where to start. Sorry for taking your time. That was a double whammy. Not only are you saying sorry to bother you, it's now sorry for taking up your time. I've actually extended that time now by going through that. You see, if you hadn't said you were sorry to bother me and that you were sorry for taking up my time, I wouldn't have to take up more time telling you not to do that. No, that was being a joke, by the way. Don't take that personally. So how do you care for yourself? Listen, first of all, you're female, without a doubt. Whoever this is female. And secondly, you're clearly a parent. So you're a female parent, probably married or in a relationship, who has generally set their store about making sure that their role is to be a primary caretaker. Nurture, loving, probably preparing nice meals, doing creative things with them. I don't know. It sounds like that's your mindset, right? So as long as I can function and be good at doing this, it reflects my value and worth. So I'll see myself through the eyes of others, the eyes of those who reflect that I'm doing a good job, which are great in most situations because, of course, these people who surround us and who we are great with tend to reflect positively that we are worthy. But the problem with that, of course, is that one, in the end, people tend to grow up and leave us, like children leave us. Not if my plan works, but they probably will. My kids probably will. So seeing myself through their eyes is like this temporary fix because they're not going to be present. And they're also going to do things like horrible things like fall in love and go on holiday and get jobs and maybe move, which is all just dreadful if I'm building my life around their perspectives of me. Even with my partner, he gets angry sometimes. He may die of a heart attack. So at the end of the day, I have to recognize that I've got to build my sense of self on who I am and what I deserve. And it's not a bad state of affairs when you suddenly realize, hey, I'm a human being with my own needs and my own core values and my own dreams. And that, even though it feels a little bit selfish to start seeing the potential to just have a little bit more for yourself, I call it self-fullness, it's a really important state. A lot of women in particular, men will feel this as well, they get into a relationship, they have children, they lose themselves. Now, it's not because they're weak, it's not because they don't have a strong personality, it's that you essentially absorb everybody else's requirements because you want to make sure that you are doing the best job possible, and you take on the mother role and the partner role. And even though this is wonderful, somehow along the way you very rarely see yourself disappearing, but often it's been chipped away at the you, tiny piece by tiny piece by tiny piece, that by the time you realize it, you've almost lost visibility. So the first key is to find visibility. And part of that is to say to yourself, what were my dreams? What did I really want to achieve? If I had a magic wand, what would it be that I would have right now? And if you're saying, for example, you don't care what happens to you anymore, you're going through a tough time, but you're worried about how people will respond if you get results, because that's what it seems to say, that you worry about everyone else depending on your results. Well, that sounds to me like you're in a situation where people around you rely on you so much that if you were to inevitably disappear because of something terrible, then you'd have to disappear being fearful of how they would be. So even in the moment of the greatest fear, you're not really thinking about the self, you're just thinking about how everybody else would respond to that and how terrible it would be for them. So you're even sacrificing your own feelings in that moment, right? And all of that is commendable on one level. It means you're a very loving human being and you're a very caring and nurturing human being. But that's not what we need to teach our kids, right? And that's not a judgment call, by the way. It's not me judging you. It's not what we want to teach our kids. It's not what we want to teach our partner. We want to teach them that we have meaning, value, we're worthy, we're a contender, we're strong, we're powerful. We are the person that lights up a room, and we teach them to find the same illuminating value in the way that they behave. We teach them that our needs count. We teach them that people deserve to treat us with only respect, otherwise there'll be consequences. We teach them that we are the example of who they should aspire to be. When I am with my boys, I teach them that if they are very lucky, in life, they too will command the respect that I believe I deserve, right? And it's not because of my ego, it's because that's the transaction. I want them to know what it is like to expect to be loved fully, respected fully, treated worthily. I want them to walk into their workplace and know that they deserve to get the wages of their dreams, that they deserve to get the promotions that they go for. I want them to be understanding of compassion. I want them to be loving, but I want them to expect love in return. I don't want them to give things away. I don't want them to just be a fundamental pleaser. I want them to also have their needs met. You understand? So when you say, I don't matter, I'm worried about how they will deal with things, well, we need to change that. You need to say to yourself, I do matter. My survival matters, not just because of the kids that I keep alive or the partner that I keep alive, but because I'm damn fine. And I'm going to teach those kids that they are. I'm going to make them see through my reflection just what they should expect from this world. So it's not just about you saying, how do I find myself? It's about you saying, man, I need to find myself, because those kids are going to be looking at me, and then they're going to be role modeling. They're going to be living out, acting out what I've given them and taught them. That's the message for all of you. You better know that you have great worth and intrinsic value, because that's what you teach people who love you to expect in their own worlds. So instead of feeling like you've got to just give all of yourself away, be like, no. For my family and for my kids, for my friends even, I'm going to teach them that I know what it's like to be worthy, so that they know what it's like to be worthy. And then it becomes an easier process, because you don't feel like some crazy narcissistic egomaniac who's just looking after your own needs. You're like, no, this is how I teach them how to know what their needs are and to have them met, right? I hope that made sense. How do I combat the fear of going around people? Let's read that again. A little bit of dyslexia then, just jumping a few words. How do I combat the fear of going outside around people due to bad anxiety and fear my dizziness and blackouts may happen? So, dizziness and blackouts. Now, listen, I'm not a doctor, obviously. So whenever you're having dizziness and blackouts, I would always say it could be worth going and speaking to a doctor, purely because if it was an inner ear thing and your dizziness and blackouts are not to do with panic, then it could be that you're suffering from something like vertigo, blood pressure issues. All I'm saying is, just caveat, because I don't want anything bad to happen to anyone. If you haven't had it diagnosed as something like generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, please go to the doctors and just get checked out, because it could be something that you need to really have some medical advice over and on. However, if we're going to bring it back to classic panic disorder, for example, dizziness and blackouts, for people who have anxiety or you've had panic attacks, people can black out literally from panic attacks. My first long-term boyfriend, honestly, that was an introduction to panic attacks. He literally looked like he'd had a stroke and would pass out. Couldn't move at all. That's why I know so much about panic disorder, because I literally lived with somebody who suffered from extreme panic disorder. And what happens is the overbreathing, they're taking in far too much oxygen, and they're not getting enough CO2 completely deregulates the way that your body copes with that, and means that you literally seize up, you don't feel like you can breathe, and sometimes inevitably people will pass out. And that's kind of the healing response of the body. Passing out seems terrifying, but of course it means that you're not conscious, therefore your breathing goes back to normal, and that means that you are able to, of course, get back in check. So there are things you can do, yes. First of all, the only way to get over a phobia is to confront it. So exposure work. So on the NHS, you get CBT, and CBT therapists often practice exposure work, but it will just mean that you need to go out, right? It will mean that you have to practice going out. That could be going and standing outside at the front of your gate for 10 minutes, walking to the end of the road with a friend, sitting down for 25 minutes, anything that gets you more and more used to spaces and places, right? That's one thing. Secondly, Diaphragmatic breathing works really, really effectively because it helps to regulate the right amount of oxygen and the right amount of CO2 in your blood system. That's what you need to do. Box breath, I know that loads of you know this anyway, guys, because you've been here a long time. But box breath, inhale through the nose for 4, hold for 4, breathe out through the mouth for 4, hold for 4. I know, first of all, you'll think, oh my God, I'm not getting enough oxygen. I get it. You just got to go with it. Also, you don't practice it during the moment. You do it every single day, 10 minutes, 3 times a day. You get used to that kind of breathing. Secondly, anchoring. I love a bit of anchoring. Find something that grounds you. Go out, find a beautiful pebble, find something of meaning in your house, buy a beautiful piece of crystal, something you can keep in your pocket. I add to that I use peppermint. I always get told off because all the practitioners say not everyone likes peppermint. I like peppermint. So if I have stressful things, I get albus oil or peppermint. You can just put it onto a tissue, you wrap it in whatever your anchor is, like a pebble, pop it in your pocket. And then if you feel panic coming on when you go out, you anchor yourself to it. So you bring it out, you smell, you do your breathing exercises. When you're at home with the anchor, you can do things of visualization to connect. So you sit on a couch, put some nice music on, get your nice anchor, now wrapped in peppermint according to me. Breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth, and then I want you to think about things that were really happy. For me, it's always the moment that my son was handed to me the first time I gave birth. Literally euphoric. Whenever I'm in a terrible situation, that's how I anchor. If I go to the dentist, that's how I anchor. That's how you create a very strong connection with an anchor. And then when you're faced with traumatic or difficult situations and circumstances, you use that to your favor. Also, something that my clients would use from time to time for those who were very, very severe with the panic disorder or anxiety attacks, they would carry around a laminated card. The laminated card would have who they were, a number that somebody could call if they needed some help, and also it would just say, I don't need an ambulance, I have panic disorder or anxiety disorder that leads to panic attacks. I just need somebody to sit with me and hold my hand. And they would literally do that. And when they were found in car parks or bus stations and they were kind of having a bad time, sat down, people wouldn't ring an ambulance, people would just come over and more often than not, a person would just sit with them and just hold the hand, because again, that anchors people. So all of those can really, really help. But the breathing exercises are the most important part of that. I promise you, the more you practice breathing, the more in check you get. And I mean, I've got loads of free hypnosis stuff on my wellbeing YouTube. I mean, I don't really use my wellbeing YouTube apart from for our lives, but there are hypnosis and anchoring exercises and loads of guided meditations. So I'd try that as well. It can really help, it reduces it. And then the overarching question before I go, when it comes down to crowds, etc., is some people are more sensitive human beings, right? So noises can bother us more. We're sensitive compared to some of our peers who just seem to be able to cope with lots of different sensory issues. So you have to kind of get to know what kind of a style of person you are, because then you can arguably figure out where your happy places are. It might be that shopping centres and loud music are never going to be okay for you, right? That's okay. There are loads of places you can go where that's not going to be an issue. Equally, you might find that you don't feel at all panicky and upset when you're in a country area with loads of space, even though there's lots of people around, because you just feel like you're at peace. Figure out your happy places as well. But with anxiety issues and panic issues, the best thing you can do is reduction techniques such as anchoring, meditation, mindful practice, and of course the classic diaphragmatic breathing, which I think is amazing. I'll see you again next week, chaps. You take care. Be kind to one another.